You are standing in a noisy trial in Athens in 399 BCE. The air is hot and stifling as 500 citizens gather to judge the wisest man in this city. Plato stands there in the shadows, quietly watching his teacher, Socrates, being sentenced to death. He is only in his early 20s, carrying the fervor and high ideals of a young aristocrat. You see Plato's eyes filled with shock and pain as he witnesses his beloved democracy suddenly collapse. The cup of poison is raised, and from that moment on, Plato's life takes a different path forever. That heartbreaking moment not only shattered Plato's worldview, but also gave birth to the whole of Western philosophy. He spent the next 50 years of his life searching for the answer to justice. From the darkness of the Athenian prison, Plato persistently built a massive castle of reason. His ideas about the cave or the ideal forms still resonate to this very day. You want to touch Plato's shoulder to comfort him, but you know you are merely a traveler of time. Your empathy melts into the pulse of history, which is now unfolding with great clarity. Hello everyone, tonight we will explore the life of Plato, his journey, a long path from the profound pain of youth to the eternal wisdom that changed the world. Imagine you are lying on a soft bed, your body beginning to loosen and sink deep into relaxation. Your breathing is steady, perfectly harmonizing with the absolute quiet of the space around you. If we had been born in his time, perhaps we would not have accomplished what he did. Because while he was founding the academy and writing the republic for all of humanity, we might still have been dozing off. So, before you drift off to sleep, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here to support our channel's growth. Please leave a comment with your current time and location so I know where you are. For instance, in Los Angeles at 10 p.m. or Tokyo at the stroke of a quiet midnight. Now, turn off the lights. Perhaps turn on a box fan or Marpac dome for some gentle white noise in the background, and let us begin tonight's journey back into the ancient past. You are standing in the middle of an outdoor athletic field, where the golden sunlight of Athens filters through the ancient olive trees. The air is thick with the scent of sweat mingled with earth and the faint aroma of fragrant oils from young athletes diligently training. Right before your eyes is a young man of unusually robust stature, his shoulders so broad they obscure the sunlight behind him. This is Aristocles, the man whom the world will later know by the illustrious name of Plato in the history of philosophy. You watch him wrestling, his rippling muscular arms pinning an opponent against the hot sand of the ring. The name Plato is actually a nickname meaning broad, reflecting the massive physique of a true fighter. This young man's lineage is exceptionally illustrious. His father was a descendant of ancient kings, and his mother carried the bloodline of the lawmaker Solon. You can feel the invisible pressure of a powerful political future weighing upon those broad shoulders. However, behind the rugged exterior of a wrestler, you notice a sensitive soul hidden within his distant gaze. Plato is not only skilled in combat, but is also an artistic spirit, passionately writing verses and tragic plays. You walk beside him along the bustling streets, where fierce debates about the Peloponnesian War are taking place. This city is at its peak, yet it is also beginning to fracture due to political ambitions and moral decay. A surprising detail is that Plato once won a medal at the Isthmian Games, a testament to his extremely rigorous physical training. This shows that he always sought a perfect balance between physical strength and intellectual refinement. Some scholars still debate whether the nickname Plato truly came from his broad shoulders or from his high forehead and scholarly writing style. Whatever its origin, that name has become an eternal symbol of human knowledge for thousands of years. You see Plato stopping before a theater troupe, his hands fingering the scrolls of tragic works into which he had poured his heart. There is a fierce struggle within the young man between becoming a politician or a free-spirited poet. The loneliness of one born into luxury, yet yearning for authentic truths beyond the material, makes you feel a deep sense of empathy. You want to tell him that those verses will soon be consumed by a greater and more powerful fire. The sea breeze blows in from the port of Piraeus, carrying a saltiness that ruffles the pristine white cloak Plato is wearing. Everything around seems to be preparing for a meeting that will completely alter the trajectory of his life forever. You quietly follow Plato's footsteps as he heads toward the city center, where crowds are gathering around a man. The peaceful childhood of Aristocles is about to close, making way for a difficult and magnificent journey. As the sunset fades over the sands of the athletic arena, Plato leaves the cheering behind to enter the bustling agora. There, a powerful, resonant voice is waiting to awaken the deepest desires within his soul. You follow Plato into the agora, the busiest square in Athens. The midday air is sultry, carrying the pungent scent of spices mingled with the fragrant aroma of freshly baked bread from nearby stalls. In Plato's hands are heavy parchment scrolls, containing the heart and soul of the tragedies he once hoped would make his name great. You feel his heart beating fast with a fiercely burning artistic ambition. Plato stops as a raspy voice echoes from the towering stone columns. It is Socrates, a short, barefoot man surrounded by the most curious youths in Athens. He does not tell ornate mythological stories. He only asks questions that pierce deep into the mind. Socrates asks about the true nature of beauty and human justice. Plato stands still, his hands gripping the scrolls tightly as he realizes his words have long been merely a superficial shell. Every verse he wrote seems to vanish before the power of such sharp reasoning. Some scholars still debate whether this meeting happened entirely by chance or if Plato actively sought out Socrates as a spiritual guide. Regardless, this moment changed history. You see the shock evident on Plato's face as Socrates strips away the clumsy definitions of the crowd. The young man's brilliant but fragile worldview begins to collapse and shatter. A surprising historical detail tells us that, immediately after that afternoon, Plato decided to set fire to all his theatrical works. He did not want to keep any trace of his illusions. The acrid smell of burning paper fills the air, like a ritual farewell to his old self to welcome a new journey. The smoke rises, sharp and stinging, blurring the steadfast gaze of the young aristocrat. You see Plato watching the flames consume the final lines he once considered his purpose in life. It is a painful but necessary sacrifice so that his soul can touch true knowledge. From a proud aristocrat, he now accepts being a silent apprentice. Plato decides to dedicate his youth to following the footsteps of the wisest and most controversial teacher. As twilight falls, casting long shadows across the square, Plato begins to learn how to reflect upon his own soul. You stand beside him, feeling your heart sink at the budding humility within his mind. You want to stop him because you know this path will lead to devastating tragedies in the future. But the thirst for truth in Plato's eyes leaves you with no choice but to walk quietly beside him like a shadow. The fracture in his old worldview is giving way to a new, more solid structure of reason. Plato has chosen the path of the philosopher, where every question is a step closer to the light. Under the glow of the fire that consumed his artistic past, Plato begins to walk beside Socrates as his most devoted disciple. Yet, the sky of Athens is slowly clouding over with dark shadows of envy, signaling a violent storm about to break over both their lives. You stand in the bustling trial of 500 Athenian citizens, where the air is thick with hatred and murmurs. The harsh spring sun of 399 BCE shines directly on the old teacher Socrates, who stands at the center. Plato stands beside you, his face pale as he listens to the groundless accusations from envious opponents. You see his hands tightly gripping the hem of his cloak as he realizes his beloved teacher is being backed into a corner. Some scholars still debate whether Plato's absence when Socrates died was due to illness or a form of avoidance. However, at this trial, he remains present as a witness to the crowd's cruel injustice. You feel the collapse within Plato's soul as he hears Socrates declare that an unexamined life is not worth living. Those words are like a blade cutting into the student's heart, shattering his faith in justice. A surprising detail is that Socrates mocked the jury by suggesting he be given free meals like an Olympic hero. Plato tried to gather bail money for his teacher, but Socrates' stubbornness closed the door on all final hopes. The final vote of 280 in his favor and 220 against dealt a fatal blow to the young man's ideals of goodness. You see Plato staring at the voting stones, where the intellectual fate of Athens has just been decided. You accompany Plato into the dark prison cell, where the smell of mold mingles with Socrates' strange serenity. Flickering torches cast distorted shadows on the walls, symbolizing a democracy that is slowly losing its way. Plato sits quietly at his teacher's feet, swallowing every final lesson, while his heart bleeds with ultimate pain. You want to scream that this is unjust, but your words only vanish into the void of time. When the cup of poison is brought in, Plato cannot stop the tears from rolling down his robust wrestler's cheeks. His weakness at this moment is the highest expression of his love for the truth and his teacher. Socrates drinks the cup dry in silence, and you see Plato turn his face away, unable to bear it any longer. From that moment on, a permanent rift formed in his mind regarding the nature of power. This pain becomes the motivation for Plato to abandon his political ambitions and begin his search for truth in foreign lands. You see him quietly leaving the city, carrying with him the ashes of his once proud youthful dreams. After the cup of poison took away the great teacher, Athens is now only a land of painful memories and cruel betrayal. Plato decides to close the door on his sorrow to seek out distant horizons, where the ancient secrets of humanity await. You are standing on the side of a ship, feeling the waves lap against the old wooden hull of the vessel. The pungent scent of sea salt fills your lungs, while the sunlight reflects brilliantly on the deep blue waters of the Mediterranean. At the bow, Plato gazes silently toward the distant horizon, where the golden sands of Egypt are beginning to come into view. The pain of losing his teacher has now crystallized into a chilling stillness within his deep eyes. You see Plato walking through the cool limestone corridors of the ancient temples in mysterious Heliopolis. The sound of footsteps echoes in the quiet space, where Egyptian priests silently guard secrets thousands of years old. Here, he absorbs knowledge of mathematics and astronomy subjects that the people of Athens still consider mystical. You see him leaning over a dry papyrus scroll, striving to decipher the symbols of the stars' movements. The journey then takes you and Plato to southern Italy, where the wind carries the scent of herbs mingled with pine resin. This is the land of the Pythagorean sect, those who firmly believe that numbers are the true essence of everything in the world. You observe Plato in deep conversation with Archytas, a brilliant mathematician and a talented leader. Plato realizes that wisdom does not necessarily have to be separate from political power and practical daily governance. A surprising detail is that Archytas once crafted a wooden pigeon that could actually fly using steam. Plato is profoundly amazed by the wonderful combination of abstract mathematical theory and practical mechanical application. Some scholars still debate whether the records of these 10 years of wandering might be metaphorical. They suggest these stories were constructed to legitimize the origins of his later great philosophical ideas. You notice a significant psychological shift as Plato begins to view the world through geometric structures. The chaos of death and injustice back home is gradually replaced by a belief in a perfect cosmic order. You want to warn him of the dangers awaiting in Sicily, but Plato seems to have found a new purpose. He believes that if rulers know mathematics, they will govern their subjects with harmony instead of resorting to violence. Moonlight illuminates the surface of the sea as the ship departs from the Italian coast, carrying a mature philosopher. You stand beside him, watching Plato draw perfect circles on the wooden deck with a piece of charcoal in absolute concentration. 10 years of wandering have transformed a suffering youth into an architect of great thought. You feel his readiness as he contemplates returning to Athens to build something eternal for future generations. Leaving behind the perfect numbers and the mystical temples of distant lands, Plato carries a treasure trove of precious knowledge back to his homeland. He knows it is time for him to build a fortress of reason where knowledge will be preserved forever in the heart of Athens. You are standing in a quiet garden located outside the ancient walls of Athens. A north wind blows in, carrying the coolness of the Cephissus River and the pungent, intense scent of olive leaves in the afternoon sun. Before your eyes, Plato strolls beneath the vast canopy of the forest, named after the hero Academus. He is no longer a wandering traveler, but has become the one to lay the first brick of knowledge. You feel an extraordinary stillness in this place, a stark contrast to the noisy bustle of the agora. This is where Plato decided to realize his great dream of kings who possess the souls of philosophers. Using the mathematical knowledge and cosmic harmony he learned in southern Italy during his previous journey, Plato believes that education is the only key to saving a decaying democracy. You see groups of young people gathered around Plato. They do not argue to win, but are together searching for the truth. Numbers drawn on the dry ground look like the sacred codes of the universe. Some scholars still debate whether records show the academy was more than just a pure school. It was also a clandestine political center where advisors were trained for kings across the Mediterranean. A surprising detail is that Plato did not collect tuition from his students, completely contrary to the sophists of the time. He believed that knowledge is a sacred gift, and cannot be bought or exchanged for exchange with money. You see Plato stop before a stone tablet, his eyes shining with an intense faith in a just future. The loneliness of a builder of souls begins to be soothed by the presence of those with a shared vision. Your hand touches the rough bark of an old olive tree, feeling the pulse of time passing by. You realize Plato is trying to prevent another disastrous death sentence for wise souls. The sunset casts long shadows over the dusty paths, creating mystical geometric shapes on the ground. Plato smiles gently as he sees a young student absorbed in solving a problem about cosmic harmony. You stand there, quietly witnessing the birth of the first university in human history. The hope for a world guided by reason is beginning to sprout from this very verdant garden. Though you know that great dreams often come with harsh trials, you still feel heartened by his devotion. Plato has found a true home for his soul after so many long years of wandering. Beneath the shade of the academy, relentless dialogues have opened doors leading into the deepest layers of human reality. Plato begins to lead you away from the familiar images of the earthly world to enter a mystical space where the truth begins to reveal itself. You are sitting in a dark and damp cave where the air smells strongly of moist earth and green moss clinging to the rock walls. The sound of water dripping steadily onto the cold stone floor creates a melancholy rhythm, making you shiver from the chill. Before you are flickering shadows on the cave wall, dancing to the fluttering firelight from behind you. You see Plato standing quietly nearby, his eyes heavy with sadness as he looks at the prisoners bound in heavy chains. The people here believe that those shadows are the only reality. They have never known the beauty of sunlight. You feel the struggle within Plato's heart as he longs to liberate them from this terrifying blindness. Plato explains to you that the world we live in is merely a dim copy of the world of absolute ideal forms. Every physical object we touch is just a shadow reflected from a noble, eternal, and brilliant reality. Some scholars still debate whether records show the cave is actually a very harsh critique. It targets those who sentenced Socrates to death because he dared to bring the light of truth directly to them. A surprising detail is that Plato believed our souls lived in the world of forms before being reincarnated into bodies. Therefore, learning is actually just a process of recollecting the great knowledge that we have accidentally forgotten. You take Plato's hand as he leads you out of the cave. The sudden sunlight is so bright it makes your eyes sting. The scent of fresh wild grass and the sound of the wind whistling through the rock crevices awaken all your senses powerfully. Plato squints at the deep blue sky. He feels the loneliness of one who has seen the true nature of reality. He fears that upon returning to the cave, the very people he wishes to save will turn and destroy him for the truth. The contradiction between his love for humanity and his disappointment in the intellect of the masses makes his soul grow heavier. You see him sigh, his breath gently dissolving into the vast space of knowledge he is striving to build. Under the golden sun of Athens, Plato begins to outline the Republic, a perfect blueprint for an ideal society. You walk beside him, feeling the steadfastness of a great intellect that never accepts falsehood. While the thoughts of the world of forms are burning bright, the belief in a philosopher king has urged Plato to leave the peace of the academy. A perilous voyage to the other side of the sea begins, where his ideals will face a brutal reality. You are standing in the magnificent palace of Syracuse in Sicily, where the air is thick with the scent of expensive incense and fragrant roasted meat. The cool marble walls touch your skin, evoking the luxury but also the deep instability of the dynasty. Before your eyes is Plato, now an old man in his 60s, with silver hair and a face deeply etched with the wrinkles of contemplation. He looks out of place amidst a court rife with the intrigues and falsehoods of the aristocracy. He has come here at the invitation of his close friend, Dion, with an ambitious goal: to transform the tyrant Dionysius II into a philosopher king. This is his chance to apply the theories of the academy to the fierce reality of politics. Imagine you are trying to teach one of the world's most arrogant and powerful young men how to restrain his desires in order to cultivate his reason. You feel the exhaustion and disappointment slowly gnawing away at the old philosopher's patience. Some scholars still debate whether the records in the seventh letter indicate that this was the darkest period of his life. It reveals the profound pain of seeing noble ideas crushed by a ruthless reality. A surprising and bitter detail is that an enraged Dionysius once had Plato sold into slavery on the sun-drenched island of Aegina. You see him standing on a dusty auction block. The man who once won an Isthmian medal is now being priced like a common household object. You want to scream out to protect him, but your voice vanishes into the noise of the human trafficking crowd. This humiliation is like a cold blade piercing through the aristocratic pride of the philosopher. Fortunately, an old friend recognized and ransomed him, but the heart's wound from the betrayal still aches. Plato realizes that changing a human soul is far more difficult than writing lines of reasoning. You travel with him on the ship back to Athens, listening to the creaking of the timber and feeling the salty sea air fill every cabin. His gaze is fixed on the horizon, where his old school awaits with a peaceful silence. The failure at Syracuse leaves Plato more meditative and profound in his thoughts on the true nature of humanity. He realizes that ideals and reality are two separate worlds, requiring a great deal of tolerance to bridge. You see him gently stroking an old parchment scroll as he silently contemplates the order of human society. The loneliness of the builder of ideals now carries a somber yet magnificent hue. The white-capped waves lap against the side of the boat like whispers of the past fading into the night. You stand there, quietly watching Plato find peace within the greatest failure of his life. The humiliating failure at Syracuse and the indignity of slavery have rendered the old philosopher's soul more still and profound than ever before. Moving away from political intrigue, Plato looks up at the vast night sky to seek solace in the eternal order of the universe. You are standing in the middle of the Academy courtyard on a moonless night, as darkness envelops the pristine white stone corridors. A chilly night breeze blows past, carrying the scent of moist earth and the whispers of old olive wood in the wind. Plato stands beside you, his silvery hair glowing under the starlight, his deep eyes intently gazing at the Milky Way. After the harrowing upheavals in Syracuse, he seems to have found solace in the stillness of the heavens. You feel the insignificance of man when standing before the infinite greatness of this vast universe. Plato begins to speak of the demiurge, a benevolent craftsman who molded the world from its initial chaos into order. This is the core of his work, Timaeus, where he presents a massive and sophisticated cosmological system. Plato believes that this world is a living being, possessing a soul and an intellect arranged according to mathematics. You see him using a small twig to draw concentric circles in the sand, representing the orbits of the celestial bodies. Each number and geometric ratio appears like notes in an eternal symphony of light. A surprising detail is that Plato believed the ultimate purpose of studying astronomy was to heal the soul. He wanted humans to adjust their inner rhythms to harmonize with the perfect movements of the planets. You see the conflict within his soul, gradually soothed by faith in an immutable cosmic order. For Plato, the chaos of human politics is but a speck of dust before the rhythmic operation of the stars. Some scholars still debate whether records show that the descriptions of the universe in Timaeus are more symbolic than scientific. They suggest this was a spiritual exercise to help people transcend the pain of reality. You feel the warmth radiating from his presence, a peace that golden palaces could never provide. The faint scent of pine resin from the ancient trees nearby makes the space feel more sacred and quiet. Plato believes our souls share the same origin as the stars, and that death is simply the journey back to one's home. You feel lighthearted as you join him in contemplating the perfect beauty of the mathematical laws in action. Starlight reflects in the old philosopher's eyes, sparkling like the beams of truth he has pursued all his life. His loneliness has now merged into the ethereal loneliness of the vast and deep universe. You stand there quietly, feeling your breath synchronize with the pulse of all things in the absolute harmony of the deep night. Plato has found the answer to earthly injustice through the eternal rotations of the sky. As the melodies of the stars permeate his mind, Plato returns to his daily routines in the beloved academy garden. In the light of his final years, he spends every precious moment refining the final laws for human life. You are sitting on a stone bench worn by time in the library of the academy. The sunset air envelops the space in a deep purple hue, so quiet that you can clearly hear the sparrows calling to one another as they return to their nests. Before you, the philosopher Plato is laboring over old parchment scrolls. The broad shoulders that once dominated the wrestling ring years ago are now slightly hunched, carrying the weight of 8 decades of contemplation and turbulent travels. The pungent scent of herbal ink, mingled with the smell of dry papyrus, fills your nostrils. You see his wrinkled hands trembling slightly as he pens the final lines of The Laws, the longest work of his life. After the bitter failure at Syracuse, Plato no longer dreams of a distant ideal city. He now meticulously designs every small detail for society, like a potter attempting to mend the cracks of reality. A surprising detail is that during his final nights, Plato often listened to the flute music of a Thracian girl. You see his hand gently tapping to the rhythm of the music, even though he was once strict toward art for fear of weakening reason. Some scholars still debate whether records show that Plato possessed unwritten doctrines. They believe his deepest essences were only transmitted orally to elite students and never recorded. You feel the serene loneliness of an intellect that has stood at the summit for too long. Plato looks out the window, where the darkness is slowly swallowing the olive tree, and smiles as he thinks of the cosmic harmony he discovered. You want to ask him about his greatest regret, but the silence emanating from him makes your words pause. He no longer needs the recognition of the crowd. for he knows the knowledge he leaves behind has become an unquenchable flame. The sound of an imaginary box fan in your mind blends with the rustling of parchment scrolls. Plato leans back slightly in his chair, his eyes half closed as if listening to an invisible melody from the world of forms he has always yearned for. Under the flickering light of the oil lamp, the image of the old philosopher appears like a living statue of wisdom. You find yourself feeling extraordinarily peaceful, sitting beside the man who spent his life seeking the meaning of the good. As the night deepens, Plato gently sets aside his pen. With all manuscripts complete, his soul is now as still as a lake without a ripple in the middle of the night. The sound of the pen on parchment grows sparse as night falls over the academy garden, signaling that a long journey is nearing its end. In the quiet space of the small room, Plato gently prepares for his final journey, returning to the eternal light he has always sought. You are standing in a small room at the academy, where the light of a late-day candle dances feebly against the cold limestone walls. The scent of beeswax mingled with the pure fragrance of herbs diffuses throughout the silent space, calming your heart. On a rustic, low wooden bed, the philosopher Plato lies peacefully, his breathing as slow as the steady pulse of time. The hands that once gripped opponents on the wrestling floor are now interlaced serenely and with immense gentleness. Some scholars still debate whether records show that Plato passed away during the wedding feast of a close friend. However, the image of him departing amidst his scrolls seems far more fitting for his magnificent soul. You step closer, feeling the fragile warmth from his wrinkled skin, which still radiates the majesty of a guide. His eyes are closed, but that high, broad forehead still seems to contain a vast sky of human knowledge. A surprising detail is that beneath Plato's pillow at the time of his passing, people found the final edited manuscripts of the Republic. Even in his moments near death, he never stopped reflecting on the most just and good society. You find yourself moved, realizing this man spent 81 years of his life searching for true light. The pain of losing his teacher Socrates years ago has now truly crystallized into an immortal legacy for all of humanity to come. The flute of the Thracian girl echoes from the distant hallway, carrying a melody that is melancholy yet incredibly soothing. Plato smiles faintly in his sleep. Perhaps he is hearing the symphony of the perfect stars he so dearly loved. You want to touch those broad shoulders one last time to show your gratitude, but your hands merely pass through the candle smoke. You realize you are but a traveler, witnessing the moment the eternal flame is passed to future generations of students. The loneliness of power and the political failures at Syracuse have now receded, giving way to absolute freedom. He is no longer Aristocles of Athens. He has become the intellect of the world, transcending all limits of space and time. Night falls over Athens, draping a soft black velvet curtain over the academy garden where the seeds of knowledge are beginning to sprout. Plato takes a deep breath, feeling for the last time the saltiness of the sea breeze mingled with the fragrance of his native flora. The final moment arrives as gently as a leaf falling onto soft grass, without any pain or lamentation. His soul begins its journey back to the world of forms, where the good reigns forevermore. Now, the space around you begins to fade. The stone columns of the academy and Plato's silhouette dissolve into the silent night. The golden light of ancient Athens recedes, giving way to absolute stillness and serenity within your own room. The steady hum of the box fan continues, like the breath of time, bringing you back to the peace of the present reality. Contemplations of justice and beauty now become drifting clouds, gently sheltering your sleep tonight. You feel your body becoming weightless, every muscle fully relaxing on the soft mattress as if drifting down a tranquil river. The stories of Plato will linger in your subconscious, like seeds of peace sprouting in your deepest dreams. Let your mind travel freely through the stars, returning to the harmony that the great philosopher once dreamed of. No more worries, no more noise. There is only absolute relaxation enveloping your entire soul and body. I wish you a very good, deep sleep, filled with beautiful dreams of the light of truth and love. Good night, my companion. Through the distant paths of history, we shall meet again soon.